one of the first people that moved out here with me.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we've been here for 6 years now.
Yeah.
And every time we go back to California, we're like, we were right.
Yeah, absolutely.
We were right. It's falling apart. It keeps going further and further down the toilet.
How do you feel like Austin is going? Because the criticism of Austin, call it 5 or 6 years ago, is that it's a cool town. It's got its own unique culture. It's Texas, but it's also its own thing. But that all of the blue staters moving in were going to totally change the politics and the culture of Austin. I actually don't think that's happened.
I think the blue staters that moved here because they recognized that wherever they were living was not tenable.
Yeah.
It was falling apart. And all of these places like New York and really California, like especially Los Angeles and San Francisco, they're falling apart. And I have a bunch of friends that are stuck there that can't move. Like maybe they have family there or maybe they have a business there.
Yep.
And they fucking hate it. And then I have a bunch of people that are trying to move, but they can't sell their house. Like, it's nuts there, man.
Yeah,
I don't think people – first of all, you get gaslit by Gavin Newsom. I mean, he's just gaslighting everybody about how well – the GDP was like the 5th largest country in the world. That's what California is.
It's like, dude.
Hey, bro, it was like that before you were the governor.
Yeah, exactly. Also, how much does a U-Haul cost if you're leaving California? And how
Right.
much does it cost if you're going to California? Because that's the real measure of whether a state's doing well.
Yeah, the state has more people moving out than moving in, and that has never happened before.
Correct.
California's, when I moved there in 1994 until I left, it was always every year traffic got worse. Every year more people moved there. Every year. And I loved it. I loved it from the time I moved there. I was like, this place is great. It's warm all the time. The weather's fantastic. There's so much cool stuff to do. The people are great.
Yeah.
And then politics ruined it.
That's right. So my wife's from Southern California, San Diego. And so we spent a fair amount of time there. And I still feel a certain sense of heartbreak over LA.
Oh, I do
Because
too.
every time I'm in LA, you can see why this was like the quintessentially American city. The architecture is beautiful. It's got its own vibe going. Like you said, the weather is amazing. And then you drive through Skid Row and you're like, how could any state or any city let this happen?
Skid Row is now 55 blocks. It was 50 blocks just a year or two ago.
Okay, so my first experience with Skid Row was, so Usha used to work at this very fancy litigation firm in Southern California. Before she was second lady, she was a corporate litigator. So there's a Christmas party in downtown LA. And you get these instructions from her firm, and they're like this really convoluted way of, this is how you have to get to this Christmas party. And I'm like, why do I have to follow these directions? Why don't I just put it in Google Maps, right? This is 5 or 6, 7 years ago. So we realized that the reason why they gave you these convoluted directions was so that you could avoid Skid Row at night. And so you get to this party, you drive through Skid Row if you follow Google Maps' directions. You get there, and it's like this beautiful facility with fancy food and fancy wine, and then there are armed guards outside of it and these gigantic walls. And I realized when I was there, you know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of going to the U.S. Embassy in Port-au-Prince, Haiti. Super security, crazy wealth and privilege and status on the inside, and squalor and misery on the outside. It's the first time I'd ever thought America, this part of America, is actually more like a third world country than anything that I thought we'd ever become.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Why is it that large population centers, like places like Los Angeles and New York, are almost always run by the Democrats?
Yeah.
What is it about – first of all, what happened with the last election in Los Angeles, just the primary, I think was
crazy.
So super sus.
Yes,
and
it
here's
is.
why it's super sus. Not just super sus that Spencer Pratt, who was in second place, got overtaken by Nithya Raman in the mail-in ballots, but that the mail-in ballots also passed a tax hike. The people voted to pay more taxes.
Yep.
In a state where you have the highest taxes.
That's right.
They're like, we don't pay enough. That is insane.
That
and then
is-
when you have direct evidence that
Yeah.
they were recruiting homeless people,
That's right.
and they were getting homeless people and giving them cigarettes and cash. There's evidence of
Yes.
this. To use their address and mail in ballots.
Yeah, I would be the Californian Joe who wakes up in the morning and says, you know what, I'm going to go and vote for higher taxes.
I don't
'Cause
pay
I
enough.
don't pay enough taxes.
I feel like we could fix this if I
Yeah,
just
that's right.
pay
If I just
5 more
pay
percent.
5% more taxes. The crazy thing about it too is it's that, okay, so after the initial ballots all came in, it was Karen Bass was number 1, Spencer Pratt was right behind her, and then number 3, whatever this woman's
Nithya
name
Raman.
is. Nithya Raman. Okay, so you would expect the mail-in ballots to be more or less like the original ballots in terms of 1, 2, and 3. I'm not saying Spencer Pratt's going
Right.
to win the mail-in ballot, but it just so happened that the third place person in relative terms did a lot better than the first and second place person.
Disproportionately better.
Such that the Republican was actually kicked out of the race so that there's not actually a real election in California. That to me was the crazy part. It's like you were designing the vote share in order to kick Pratt out and put the third person into second place. That to me is like very, very bizarre. Because what is the theory of the mail-in vote that is somehow like so much more pro Nithya relative to Karen Bass?
Makes no sense.
Makes no sense.
Makes no sense. Why would it be?
Yeah.
Why would it be? I mean, Karen Bass was ahead by every metric.
Yeah. But I mean, okay, so you asked the question, why do all these blue states or why
Yeah.
do all these big cities, population centers end up becoming blue? And I think it's like a very complicated, right? So one thing, and you said this a few months ago, and like when you said it, I was like kind of annoyed by it, but then I like thought there's like an element of truth to it, which is that Republicans still fundamentally have a cool problem, right? There's something more charismatic, more cool about the Democrats as opposed to the right.
Did I say
and
that?
so you said something about there are too many dorks or something on the right.
There's a lot of dorks.
You know, fair. I'd say there's a lot of dorks
There's
on
a
the
lot
left.
of
but like,
dorks on the
whatever.
left too.
But
It's a different kind of dork.
It's a different kind of dork. But the point is that there's something, like, okay, if you're a pop star, you're a rock star, you're an actor, you're in all these cultural centers, you're more likely to be left than right. And so I think that a lot of young people who are attracted to these population centers, they sort of move along with the prevailing culture. I think that's one thing that's going on. I think a second thing that's going on is the people who are sort of attracted to a certain kind of right of center politics. They want the suburbs, they want the single family home, they kind of want to be left alone, they don't want sort of to be able to hear what their neighbors are doing. So I think a little bit of it's just cultural self-segregation, and that's meant that a lot of these population centers have gone blue. But it's very complicated. I've thought about this a lot, and I also just, I'm not one of these people who says we should just abandon California to the Democrats, like let them deal with their own problems. I think California is like a quintessential part of the American dream. Like if you just abandon California, you've like lost something very core to American culture. And I don't want to give up on it. Like I'm not saying we're going to win California in my lifetime necessarily, but I don't like the idea of giving up on it.
Well, it's not just giving up on. I mean, giving up on it would be terrible. It's an awesome state. The real problem is it's deeply corrupt.
Yes.
I mean, deeply, deeply corrupt. And what they're trying to do is make it impossible for the other side to win.
Yeah.
And there should be laws against that. First of all, the idea of mail-in ballots for anybody other than people who are invalids, who can't leave their homes, or military, or people that are, for some reason
Absolutely.
they're serving overseas, they're doing
Yes.
something overseas, it should not be legal.
That's right.
And the fact that it became ubiquitous during COVID
Yeah.
is a giant problem.
Yeah, so this raises one of my total segue here, side point. But so if you remember in the aftermath of the 2020 election where there was all this like debate about was the election stolen, was the election
Right.
not stolen, all the litigation that moved through, there was a case in Pennsylvania that like didn't get very much attention. And I'm going to butcher it a little bit, but basically it was a guy in a rural area of Pennsylvania saying, you're undercounting my vote because we didn't have the opportunity to do the mail-in ballots like they did in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. And like the argument was a kind of disparate impact, right? The cities ginned up all the mail-in balloting and the ballot harvesting. You didn't do that in the country, and that hurt sort of our representation. So they take this case to the Pennsylvania courts. And what's crazy is the Pennsylvania courts basically say, you're making kind of a good point here. like the ballot harvesting did affect Republicans in a more negative way. It did mean that certain people in the more rural parts of the state were underrepresented. But then the court conclusion was, this is not a problem a court can fix. Like, that's a political problem. Change your, local elections leaders, change your laws. Like, that's not a remedy that the court has to fix. And so everybody saw that case and they're like, oh, the judge rules against Donald Trump, rules against Republicans for saying that there was something illegitimate. But no, actually, the judge kind of said, there is something kind of fishy here. We're just the wrong venue to fix it.